Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Tacoma Tideflats Sub-Area Planned Action EIS Public Scoping Meeting. We'll give folks a minute to join and then we'll get started. Good evening, everyone. If you're just joining us, welcome to the Tacoma Tideflats Sub-Area Planned Action EIS Public Scoping Meeting. We're just giving folks another minute to join and then we'll start the presentation shortly. All right, welcome to the public meeting for the Tacoma Tideflats Sub-Area Planned Action EIS. My name is Nicole Budzinski. I'm part of the project team from Environmental Science Associates, and I will be facilitating the evening. Before you begin the presentation, I'd like to walk through a couple important items. We'll have two segments in tonight's meeting. First will be a presentation followed by a public scoping comment period. The purpose of tonight's meeting is really to give the City of Tacoma staff an opportunity to hear from you, so there will not be a Q&A or discussion portion of the evening. To reduce background noise and make sure things run smoothly, all attendees will be muted during the presentation and comment portions. Due to the limitations of the Zoom webinar, we will not be able to show who is in the meeting or have cameras on. However, I'll provide an update throughout the night about how many people are in the meeting. So far, we have 26 people here tonight, so welcome. As a reminder, all comments provided will be part of the SEPA record and will be made available during the draft EIS. Tonight, everyone is participating through Zoom, so here are the key features that you need to know about. You can adjust your volume by clicking on the audio settings on the bottom left of the screen. If you can't hear us well, please try turning up your volume. To enable a live transcript or closed captioning, please select the CC Live Transcript icon and then show subtitle. We have a live captioner here tonight named Sue who will be transcribing live. If you have a clarifying question about the format of the meeting tonight or the EIS process, you can submit it through the question and answer Q&A window on the bottom of your screen. The chat is disabled for attendees tonight. Again, we're really here to share information about the project and then hear from you. So please save your scoping comments for the verbal comment portion of the meeting or submit them via the other scoping comment channels that we will share with you shortly. Many of your questions are actually really great comments, so we do encourage you to submit your questions as official scoping comments as they help the project team understand if aspects of the draft alternatives or scope are not clear or comprehensive as they prepare for the draft EIS. If you are having any technical issues with Zoom, please also use the Q&A feature to message us and we will do our best to help fix your issue. We also have a call-in number for those who wish to listen along tonight. That number and the webinar ID are provided on the slide. And as a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. Any comments that you make tonight will be part of the official SEPA record. If you need to refer back to any draft documents that are available on the city's website, you can visit cityoftacoma.org/tideflatsplan to read the preliminary EIS alternatives and view project maps. We have a court reporter here tonight or captioner to record your verbal comments, but this meeting is only one way that you can provide a scoping comment. You can also submit your written comments online or via mail through the following ways. Online, you can go to that link bit.ly/tideflatscomment to enter the comment portal directly. And you can also mail your comments to this address. Mailed comments should be postmarked by 5 p.m. or by August 5th, 2022. And online comments should be submitted by 5 p.m. on Friday, August 5th, 2022. So I'll leave that here for a second if folks want to take a picture of that, but we will periodically be sharing this information in the chat and elsewhere in the presentation so that you can submit comments online or via mail as well if you wish. So the main event on tonight's agenda is really to give you an opportunity to provide a scoping comment. Some attendees may not be familiar with the proposal or the SEPA process, so we'll give you some background on those topics first. We'll share information about the Tacoma Tideflats Subarea Plan and Planned Action EIS, the State Environmental Policy Act and Environmental Impact Statement process, how you can provide a comment, and listen to and consider the perspective of individual members who are providing comment. The purpose of the meeting, again, is really to give the city staff an opportunity to listen to you. So the meeting will not have a discussion or Q&A portion. So I'll do some quick introductions. Environmental Science Associates is the team that's preparing the EIS. So my name is Nicole Budzinski. I'm from the ESA team, and I'm joined by Pam Zander. We also have city staff here tonight. Stephen Atkinson from the city of Tacoma will be providing a welcome remarks and proposal overview. We also have Adam Nolan from the city staff who's here listening. And then we also have Stephen Johnson from our team at ESA who's doing tech support in the background, as well as Sue who's doing captioning. So we'll start with some welcome remarks and proposal overview from Stephen Atkinson, followed by an EIS scoping overview provided by my colleague Pam. And then we'll take a short break, and I will then give the mechanics for how we're going to do the public scoping portion of the evening tonight, and exactly how you can provide verbal comment. So with that, I will turn it over to Stephen Atkinson.
Great. Thank you, Nicole, and great to be here this evening. I'm Stephen Atkinson. I'm a principal planner with the City of Tacoma's Long Range Planning Division, and I'm the City of Tacoma's lead staff person on the Tideflats Subarea Plan. I'm going to keep my welcome remarks short tonight. As Nicole said, the real focus of this meeting tonight is to hear from our community members, and really excited to see everyone who's here. We have 28 attendees now, and I see a few more folks are joining by the minute. And really, I think one of the things I'm most excited about with this opportunity this evening is to really directly hear from our community members and you all who have joined us this evening. So I just want to acknowledge, one of the challenges that we recognize through this planning development process has been some of the challenges with having virtual meetings, and that has impeded some of the kind of conversation and dialogue that I think we're accustomed to when we're having in-person meetings. So I know we certainly recognize those challenges. And over the past 6 months, we've been working really diligently with the Tideflats Steering Committee to develop the preliminary alternatives for the scope of the EIS process. Really, like I said, excited for this opportunity now to hear from our community members about kind of whether or not you think we're on the right track, whether you're happy with the direction that the plan is going, and key issues, topics, or considerations that you want to make sure are addressed within the EIS and plan. And this is a really key time period in this planning process. So just to set the stage a little bit, once we finalize the scope of the EIS and kind of get through this time period with the public scoping opportunities, and then finalize that scope and the alternatives, we anticipate really by the end of this year that we will be starting the development of the plan and the draft EIS. And that's a really exciting thing, I think, for anyone who's been following this project since 2017. We know it's taken a long time, longer than what we anticipated. So we're excited for that opportunity as well to shift into that next phase. Next slide, please. And before I get into the rest of the presentation on some of the background and some of the project overview, I did want to take this time at the beginning to acknowledge that the project that we're working on, the Tideflats Subarea Plan, is being conducted on the historic and current homelands of the Puyallup Tribe of Indians. Since time immemorial, they have hunted, fished, and gathered in the Tacoma Tideflats, and they retain these rights to this day. I'd ask that we take this moment to recognize the unique responsibility we have in being co-stewards with the tribe over these lands and waters, and to work with them to safeguard their treaty-protected rights. Next slide. Now, just by way of introduction, I want to make sure that we kind of discuss a little bit the study area and the plan area that we are working within. One of the key things to know is that in the map on the left, the dark outline represents the established manufacturing and industrial center boundary. So this is a designation I'll talk about in a few minutes on a different slide. But that is the area in which the plan is being developed and it's based on that manufacturing industrial center boundary. I want to distinguish just very briefly the difference between the plan area and a study area. So while the plan is based on that manufacturing industrial center location, we also understand the impacts of the decisions that we make through planning and development and permitting impact areas beyond that specific boundary. So we have a pretty good understanding that traffic impacts extend beyond the local area in which we're planning. Things like air quality impacts can have a broader area of impact. So the study area will, depending on the environmental elements that we are talking about, will expand beyond, potentially beyond that plan boundary. A couple of key things to highlight on this area, and I think we all have probably a pretty good understanding of some of the aspects of the Tideflats, but this is an area that has very diverse, I think, community interest, community perspectives on this area, different community relationships. It is an area with significant environmental assets, unique shoreline locations, tidal creeks, marshes, fish and wildlife habitat. We also understand that this is an area that has the most significant manufacturing industrial employment concentration in Pierce County. And as I mentioned a moment ago in the land acknowledgement, it's also the ancestral lands of the Puyallup tribe of Indians and provides a lot of other cultural resources as well through parks and recreation and other activities within that area. So again, a lot of different ways that Tacomans relate to this area. And what happens in the Tideflats has much broader impact. This is an area with both regional and statewide significance. Next slide. Likewise, there's a very diverse policy framework that we operate within when we do planning in the city of Tacoma and when we're conducting the Subarea planning process. And this is important to note because we do have kind of guardrails that we work within when we do this planning. So in the same way that the Tideflats is not a blank slate, we have existing businesses, we have existing shoreline habitat, we have existing infrastructure within the area. We also have an established policy framework that we have to take into consideration when developing the plan and the environmental impact statement. So the elements on the left can represent some of those key framework elements. So we have at the state level, the Growth Management Act and Shoreline Management Act establish some of the key shoreline land use policies. The growth management identifies specific policies we have to plan for container ports within the state of Washington. And we're one of only 2 jurisdictions that are required to plan for container port elements within our comprehensive plan. We also have obligations with the Puyallup tribe. So we want to make sure that we are respecting and preserving and protecting the treaty rights of the Puyallup tribe of Indians, and that we're fulfilling our obligations to consult with the Puyallup tribe through the land claim settlement agreement. More broadly as well, we also have the Puget Sound Regional Council multi-county planning policies, which establish policies that we must plan for to maintain the certification of our comprehensive plan, countywide policies. And we also understand that some of the partners that we are working with also have specific state requirements and mandates that they plan under. And at the end of this planning process, I will note that the Subarea plan will eventually become an element of the City of Tacoma's comprehensive plan. Next slide. Now that kind of the shared interests, the shared perspectives of the different partner governments, as well as that broad policy framework that I mentioned, is part of the impetus for really establishing the shared planning framework that we are following as part of this process. There's a number of shared interests that we have with the Puyallup Tribe of Indians, Port of Tacoma, Pierce County, and Fife to develop a plan and predictability and identify areas where we have shared objectives and shared goals for this area. One of the values that we've heard really significantly through this process among those governments is really to develop a strong understanding about the interests of our partner governments, their perspectives, and to develop as much cohesion among our governmental partners as possible. So this is a plan that is being done in a very unique way, unlike any other planning effort that we've engaged in, where we are really developing a plan that will be co-produced by the City of Tacoma, Puyallup Tribe, Port of Tacoma, Pierce County, and Fife. The significant amount of the effort going into this plan is being led by staff from all those governments, as well as a steering committee with elected representatives from each of our partners. Next slide, please. As part of both the policy framework as well as the agreements that we have with our partner governments that are guiding this effort, there are a number of different plan elements that ultimately the Subarea plan will address. And a lot of this can be found both on our website under the work plan, as well. Another great resource to see some more of the detail on what these planning requirements are through the Puget Sound Regional Council Centers Planning checklists. So we do have very specific plan elements as well as goals and policies that have been established that we have to plan for. Now, we do have a lot of flexibility in terms of how we locally determine the best ways to plan for these goals and policies. But again, this is an important way of kind of identifying some of those guardrails. So the plan will include a description of the vision for the subarea, for the Tideflats. It will describe the role of the center, both locally and regionally. It'll address the appropriate and inappropriate, compatible and incompatible land uses within the area. And it'll go through policies and goals for the environment, economy, public facilities and services, and transportation. And again, just some examples of the kinds of things that we will be working through. We do have regional goals that we have to plan for a multimodal transportation system within the Tideflats area. And we do have policies that support, through this planning effort, evaluating ways to reduce and mitigate the impacts of climate change and greenhouse gas emissions. Next slide. Now, the next couple of slides, I wanted to just briefly cover a little bit of background for folks that may be fairly new to this. So I mentioned earlier in the presentation that this is an area that is a designated manufacturing industrial center. And that designation is really the starting point for the boundaries of the Subarea plan that we are developing. And this is a designation that was established all the way back in 2002 through the Puget Sound Regional Council. It's been adopted into our own comprehensive plan. And throughout the region, there are only 10 manufacturing industrial centers designated. So these are areas of regional significance that are planned for regional employment growth. And the maintenance of that designation as a manufacturing industrial center is a critical component for the city to maintain regional funding priority for transportation projects in particular within this area. But other grants often also require consistency and recognition within the comprehensive plan for the grant eligibility. Next slide. And a question we often get is, what is a Subarea plan? And so obviously this is a plan with a focused geography that we're looking at. We looked at the map earlier of the subarea that we are planning for within the Tideflats. And it's important to know that line because the Tideflats, in some people's imagining, is a broader area, including maybe all, a much larger area within Commencement Bay. So when staff and our consultant team talk about the Tideflats, we are usually talking about that very specific boundary. So one of the things just to understand about the Subarea plan is generally what we're starting from is that the city already has a comprehensive plan, and the comprehensive plan sets citywide goals and policies. And a couple of those goals that we have are to support significant housing and employment growth within the city. We have policies and goals pertaining to things as diverse as our transportation system, our park and recreation system. We establish goals and policies for the provision of public services and facilities to different neighborhoods and communities within the city. And what a Subarea plan does is it allows us to start to take those policies that are citywide and start to think about how they apply and how they pertain to a very specific area of the city with a very specific existing set of land uses, environmental factors, land use factors, etc. So really allows us to think about how those apply within that area to really understand what's within that area today, what's existing, and to develop a plan that's really then grounded in those existing conditions, and then looks at then how we can accommodate long-term the growth and development that we're envisioning for this area. One of the things it does, it allows us to really assess then the potential growth impacts that would be associated with the growth and development within that subarea. Next slide, please. And that's really one of the benefits of doing a sub-area plan is, first, that it really allows us to assess the potential environmental impacts of different land use decisions, of different capital investments, and then to do that environmental review in a way that we can then allow the data, the information from that environmental review to inform the plan itself. And so that's kind of the iterative nature of this planning process. We want the environmental information from the EIS to really help inform the policy decisions that ultimately the steering committee and then ultimately the city council will be making for this area. A couple of the other things I think are really worth highlighting in terms of some of those benefits. It can provide significant predictability for our community. So we are trying to do is identify and disclose as much of the potential environmental impact at the front end of the process as possible, and identify the mitigation measures that are going to be used for development, so that when we get to a project by project permit review, we already have a really informed regulatory, policy and regulatory system that deals with that development. And we've been able to give information to our community about the types of mitigation that we'll be requiring. Next slide. This was a slide that we had used back in early 2021 when we were starting our visioning process with the community. And this was a slide that we used to try to identify some of the kinds of questions that we're trying to resolve through this process. And I think it's kind of worth revisiting this today to help set the stage for the conversation today and for the public comments. So this is a process that's going to try to answer some of these key questions. How do we maintain a thriving port in the face of global competition and climate change? How can we improve the overall health of the Tideflats while also expanding and preserving employment? How can we better align public and private interests and leverage resources to coordinate our infrastructure investments in this area? How can we ensure healthy, plentiful salmon and shellfish in a complex urban environment? And how can we ensure a safer environment for both workers and residents within this area? Now, it's not an exclusive list of the kinds of questions that we're going to be grappling with through this process, but some examples of the kinds of things that we are working through and will continue to work through with our community. And hopefully that's a way to help start thinking about the kinds of comments you may want to share this evening. Next slide. Now, overall, as I mentioned in just my kind of introductory welcome, this is a project that's been really underway since 2017, when the City Council adopted a resolution initiating the Tideflats Subarea planning process. The majority of work in terms of the development of the plan, the preliminary alternatives baseline report has really happened since 2020. Unfortunately, at the outset of this, as we were going through the hiring process for a consultant team and launching our public engagement work, is when the pandemic really started. And so we have been conducting most of the work for the plan development through the pandemic, and we do acknowledge the impacts that that has had. On our website today, you can find all these documents. We adopted early in mid-2020 the public engagement plan. The baseline conditions report is available as well, which helps establish the existing policies, programs, and regulations that are within what we call the no action alternative in the EIS. I mentioned the community visioning process. We have a report online that summarizes the methods and engagement we conducted at that time and the outcomes from that. And then in March, our steering committee recommended the preliminary future development alternatives, at which point we then were able to start planning for this scoping phase. Next slide. So we do have some key next steps, and we will kind of the next two slides, I think we'll highlight some of the immediate steps through the scoping phase, and then a little bit of the longer term forecast on the planning process. So we are asking, initially we have public scoping comments by August 5th at 5 p.m. Those comments will be directed to staff and our consultant team. And so we will be using that as part of the formal EIS scoping period and to help inform the final scope of the EIS. Following that, though, there will be other opportunities to provide comment. So between August and likely October or November, we will be working with the City Council to provide them the comments that we've received through the scoping phase and have an opportunity for the City Council to provide recommendations on the final scope of the EIS and the alternatives. As part of that phase, because we'll be working through that with the City Council, we do anticipate a City Council public hearing and public comment period so the Council can also hear directly from our community on the progress we're making and whether or not there are any changes that you would want to see to the direction of the planning effort. Following that, I'll just make note again that there will be then a project launch for the final scope of the environmental review, likely by the end of the year, and then initiating the draft plan and EIS development process. Next slide. So this is a slide that's intended to show a little bit of the background on the information that we've used to develop the EIS alternatives that's in the kind of the basis for the scoping process, as well as some general timelines for the next steps. So really, since September of 2021, we've been working primarily with our Tideflats advisory group and the Tideflats steering committee to develop guiding principles for the EIS, as well as the specific EIS alternatives that you hopefully have been able to review online on the city's webpage. That work has really been informed by the outcomes of the community visioning process that we conducted in the first half of 2021. It's been informed by the work plan that we developed jointly between the 5 government partners, which outlines some of our shared objectives for this effort. And it's also informed by the planning framework that we work within. So again, kind of those guideposts that we work within at the state level and regionally. So a lot of information has gone into the development of those alternatives. And so the EIS alternatives phase is really split between kind of the initial phase with the steering committee recommendation, now the formal comment period, and then after the conclusion of the city council process, we will then be shifting later in fall through summer of 2023 into the draft EIS and draft plan development process. And our anticipated completion date would be in 2024 for the final EIS and final plan. Next slide. And with that, that actually concludes my portion of the presentation. I'd like to now introduce and welcome Pamela Zander, our project manager with ESA, and who will be introducing the EIS scoping. Thank you, Pam.
Thank you, Steve, and thanks everyone for attending the meeting this evening. I'm going to be starting out by giving some basic information about the State Environmental Policy Act. And this is some legislation that was passed back in 1971, and you can find more details about it in the Washington Administrative Code 19711, which is cited here. The acronym SEPA or SEPA is usually used as a shortened version of the State Environmental Policy Act. And it's really a process. Some people think it's a permit action, but it really is a process, public process that will help gather information from people in the public, and it helps agency decision makers, applicants, and the public all understand how the proposal is going to affect the environment. And in this case, you know, Steve's laid out the proposal, which is a programmatic sub-area plan. There's no specific project. It's a regional planning process. And City of Tacoma is the lead agency, meaning that they're the ones that are carrying out the process for the for SEPA. And also the appropriate level of analysis for this proposal is an environmental impact statement. An environmental impact statement is required when a lead agency determines a proposal is likely to have a significant adverse environmental impact. It's also required if there's a planned action involved with the proposal, and there is a planned action involved in this proposal. So when we talk about an environmental impact statement, it's really a document, and there are specific formatting requirements and notification requirements involved in putting together this document. And the result is that we hope that there will be a document that will provide information for people to be able to make good decisions about the future. And you'll see different elements of the environment. There are 16 different elements that we look at and decide, is there how much analysis is appropriate to look at. And these can be anything ranging from earth, plants and animals, cultural resources, and transportation, et cetera. And our group at Environmental Science Associates, or ESA, we are contracted to put together a document which will provide objective analysis of what the proposal is overall. And our experts are obliged to be objective about that. And we hope the result is that we can hand over something the public and the city can rely on and feel comfortable to make decisions for the future. So we're going to look at the environmental conditions. We're going to look at the different alternatives the city is proposing. We're going to look at potential impacts. We're going to look at mitigation measures. And the whole point is to try to come up with a proposal that has the least environmental impact, adverse environmental impact. Next slide, please. So there are some requirements in the process. And the first thing that is required is that we go through what we call scoping, which is the phase that we're in right now. This is the scoping meeting. And this is really meant to narrow the focus of what we're going to analyze in the document. So we really want to hear from the public and interested stakeholders of what you think likely significant adverse impacts might be. What do you think should be included in the alternatives? And of course, you know, as Stephen mentioned, you know, this information is provided in detail on the city website. So I really encourage you to look at that to get additional detail. And then if you find out that there's some kind of adverse impact, do you have ideas for mitigation measures, or what do you think should be required? So these are all things that we're looking for information from you all tonight. The comment period started on June 21st and it ends August 5th. And then just going over the overall project schedule again that Stephen presented, you know, you can see here that we are in presentation of the EIS alternatives from a conceptual level. And however, we haven't analyzed anything yet. So we're still waiting on those comments that are coming in during the scoping period. And we won't start on the draft EIS until the alternatives have been integrated with comments as appropriate. And then you can see that we will then have that concurrent draft plan, draft EIS, and then no decisions will be made until the final EIS has been issued. So, you know, there's some things that we are obliged to do in the EIS. We do have to evaluate the impact from, you know, use and development activity that's proposed. And we do have to have alternatives that provide different assumptions. And you'll see the alternatives here have very distinct land use and development assumptions associated with each one. So we're trying to get to a range of alternatives that incorporate lots of different interests, lots of different perspectives. But we also have to include an alternative that has what we call lower environmental cost, and that's not a financial cost, that's an environmental impact cost. So you'll see that there are several different levels of environmental impacts, and so that's why. And so we don't have to look at just choosing one of the alternatives. So you'll see there's a range of alternatives, but you might like one aspect of one alternative, but not another one. And so you can think of how you might want to mix and match some of the ideas in each of the alternatives. We just want to make sure that we've analyzed the potential environmental impacts of anything that may want to be approached. So again, the analysis has not happened yet. The scope determines what will be analyzed. And then we're also obliged to follow the planning requirements that are given to us in the Growth Management Act, the Shoreline Management Act, the Vision 2040-2050 that the Puget Sound Regional Council comes up with. And then there are also additional studies that can be considered. And in this case, there are some economic analysis and climate vulnerability and sea level rise, to name just a few. And so I think those will also be of interest to people, and you can comment on those as well. So now I'll hand it back to my colleague, Nicole, to talk a little bit about making the verbal comments.
Thank you, Pam, and thank you, Stephen. So we are going to take a quick 5-minute break, and then when we return, I'll go through the mechanics for how we'll be accepting the public scoping comments this evening. Each person will be given 3 minutes to provide a comment, and I'll walk you through that. But again, tonight is only one of the ways that you can provide a comment. You can also submit your comments online to our comment portal using that link on the slide. That's bit.ly/tideflatscomment. You can also mail in your comment, and all the comments will be weighted equally, whether they're given here tonight verbally, submitted via mail, or submitted online. And if you want to look at some more information during the break before giving a comment, you can go to the website cityoftacoma.org/tideflatsplan. So with that, we'll take a short 5-minute break and return by 7:42. So we'll see you in 5 minutes. Yes, I incorrectly said 7:42. I meant we'll see you here at 6:42. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone, from our short 5-minute break. We will get started with moving on to the public comment section of the evening tonight. So I will go over the logistics for how we're going to do the verbal comments tonight. So if you would like to provide a verbal comment, you can use the raise a hand button located at the bottom of the window to be entered into a queue to speak. And then everyone will be in a queue and I'll call your name when it is your turn to speak. I'll do my best with pronouncing your name. And once I call your name, our colleague Stephen Johnson will unmute you and you'll be able to begin speaking. You'll have 3 minutes to speak and share your comment. We'll share a timer on the screen to help you keep track of time. When you give your comment, please begin your comment starting with your full name and your physical address for the record. Please also speak slowly and clearly so that our captioner can do an accurate job of capturing your comment. When 3 minutes are up, we will move on to the next speaker. If you've joined by phone this evening and you would like to provide a comment, you can press *9 to virtually raise your hand and then *6 to unmute. If you're experiencing any technical issues or have any clarifying questions about the EIS process or logistics tonight, you can submit them in the Q&A. We ask that you do not send your written scoping comments to the Q&A, but rather use our online comment form, bit.ly/Tideflats comment. And again, all comments are weighted equally, whether you share them here tonight or whether you submit them online or via mail. And if you feel that you have more to share than the 3 minutes tonight, we encourage you to submit your comments online or via mail. So with that, we will get started. All right, we're going to begin the comment with Andrew Trask. When you begin your comment, please remember to state your full name and your physical address and speak slowly and clearly. Your time will begin now.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Trosky and I'm with US Oil. It bears repeating that while oil has been in our name for 70 years, the future of our company is in cleaner, greener fuels. This shows up in what we continue to invest in energy transition. We're proud that our ethanol next-gen project supports the global supply of low-carbon fuels. Right now, our company is working with TPU and the state in the development of a green hydrogen hub for Tacoma. The city has a real opportunity to capture up to $1 billion in federal funding for a hub. Just this morning, I was in a meeting with Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, and they believe green hydrogen makes sense. With their visionary thinking as a backdrop, we are concerned that the alternatives being considered by the city do not fully and fairly consider industrial innovation at the port. Specifically, it is not clear that the alternatives will allow me to permit a green hydrogen facility. This lack of consideration could limit development like a green hydrogen hub and curtail progress of a true energy transition. Our application to the Department of Energy needs to have certainty around permitting. Additionally, when it comes to people, the alternatives being considered also lack consideration of jobs that exist today and those created in the evolution of port industries, and they appear to put weight on an aspirational goal of 10,000 jobs with no explanation of how those jobs will be created. This is short-sighted given the reality of the emerging careers necessary in the work to reduce carbon. Our values, including respect for what is necessary to maintain and strengthen habitat, is a part of who we are. Development of the habitat and non-industrial uses does not need to conflict with the existing and potential future industrial uses of the port. We urge support of policy that can and should be an example of people and companies working together toward a future powered by green energy and cleaner, greener fuels. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next person who has their hand up. I'll restart the timer here. Just a moment, my screen has frozen. I apologize for the technical difficulty. It appears that my screen has frozen, so I am going to try and reshare this presentation one more time. Okay, we're gonna have someone else share the presentation since mine has frozen. I apologize for the delay. Just one moment while we resolve this technical issue. Excellent. Thank you. All right, we're back on track. So I will move to the next speaker. The next speaker is Maddie Merton. When you are ready to speak, please give your full name and your address at the start of your comment, and please speak slowly and clearly. And your comment will begin once the timer starts.
Hi, I'm just waiting for the timer to start. Good evening. My name is Maddie Merton, Vice President for Business Retention Expansion at the Economic Development Board for Tacoma Pierce County. Our address is 950 Pacific Avenue, Suite 410, Tacoma, Washington, 98402. For the record, I'd like to mention that the EDB's President and CEO, Bruce Kendall, has submitted a written letter on behalf of our organization. And thank you for the chance to comment tonight. I am the first female Cambodian immigrant to lead our program. I grew up here in the South Tacoma neighborhood, and my family and parents own homes here. In my role, I help existing businesses retain and create new family wage jobs in our community. As stated by the city, the Tideflats sub-area plan and EIS scoping process should examine every alternative through the lenses of economic prosperity for all, environmental remediation and protection, transportation and capital facility planning, and public participation and outreach. In terms of economic prosperity for all, some elements of the four alternatives will put thousands of jobs and the families they support at risk. It must consider what is truly at stake. At last count, there are 219 businesses in the Tideflats. A recent University of Washington Tacoma study estimates that just 20 of these businesses account for $2 billion in direct and $3.3 billion in indirect economic activity. These 20 businesses will pay millions of dollars in taxes annually to the city, over $50 million in B&O taxes, and over $5.5 million in property taxes. Trying to replace high-wage industrial jobs in the Tideflats with unknown, aka fictional replacement jobs is a recipe for economic stagnation and disaster. For example, on average, every single durable manufacturing job creates 7.44 additional jobs due to spending for supplies at the job site, plus the spending on salaries and wages earned. Few other industries come close. Tacoma families depend on these jobs, and so do many others for their livelihoods and quality of life. The port has invested more than $300 million in environmental initiatives and continue these measures. The cornerstone of the port's clean air strategy is to get to zero emissions by 2050. And since its launch in 2008, the port has reduced diesel emissions by 80% and greenhouse gas emissions by 20%. The state, city, port, and county have invested millions of dollars in critical infrastructure to relieve traffic, reduce pollution, and move products. More effort should be made to encourage public participation and outreach. Today's meeting was not widely advertised, and as of tonight does not appear on the council or planning commission calendars. The Tideflats Steering Committee and the Tideflats Advisory Group should be more deeply utilized to help the city with this process. Please carefully consider that this important process will have lasting impacts for our community, our competitiveness as a region to attract future investment, and the creation and retention of quality jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next speaker in the queue. That's Barbara Bernstein. So Barbara, please remember to state your full name and your physical address and speak slowly and clearly. And you can begin providing comment when the timer begins.
Hi, my name is Barbara Bernstein, and I live at 4824 Marine View Drive. I am just wondering, about 5 years ago, and I don't know exactly the timeline, we were all summoned to a library on 38th Street regarding all this Tacoma stuff, or this Tideflats stuff, and they were dredging and going to put the dredge outside of our cabins on Marine View Drive. It was, I think, put on by the Army Corps of Engineers and the port. I have tried many times to contact the Army Corps of Engineers. Does this project that we're talking about tonight relate at all to that? Does anybody know?
No, hi, Barbara. I'll just kind of jump in here really quick, but I'd be happy to follow up with you. It sounds like it was part of probably a particular development proposal in the Port Tideflats, whereas we're talking about a broader kind of planning effort for that area. So I would encourage, if there were any concerns that you had with the discussion at that time, to share those tonight, but then I'm happy to follow up with you directly to get you more information.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if I'm still on. I have a lot of concerns about that. It's building an island in front of my cabin, in front of my home. I think it would even restrict boat access. I'm very concerned about it, and so are a lot of my neighbors. That's all I need to say.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the next speaker in the queue. That's Robin Evans Agnew. When you are ready to speak, please state your full name, your physical mailing address, and your comment can begin once the timer gets going.
Hi there. My name is Dr. Robin Evans Agnew. I live at 3015 North 15th Street, and I'm a planetary health nurse. My comments are directed towards Alternative 3 and ensuring that the sub-area planning process exceed its obligation to address the 5 guiding principles that were set when this process began. Salmon, shellfish in the Hylabos, Wapato, Puyallup, healthy communities and ecosystems, safe and healthy work environments, inclusive and equitable growth that protects frontline communities, and diverse opportunities for culture, education, scientific, and recreation. We need more imagination and innovation to meet the climate challenges of the next 30 years and our obligations to the future 7 generations. For planetary health, this is not just about climate change. It is also about biogeochemical flows in tidal zones that control phosphorus and nitrogen cycles, and global atmospheric aerosol loading from air pollution, which are at critical stages of risk and imbalance in our planet. And it's not just about salmon and shellfish. It's about the killer whale, the otter, the beaver, the pollinators, and the existing biodiversity of this area. Alternative 3 provides the best hope for healing the Hylabos and the vulnerable communities in the Northeast Tacoma, yet should be more assertive in transitioning to light industrial and innovation hubs for scientific research and regenerative practices. The treatment of this northeast side of the Tideflats should mirror the treatment of the area adjacent to the downtown. We have people living and working in this area on all 3 sides, as was evidenced by our past speaker. I want better assessment data from this review, including a health impact analysis and a cumulative impact analysis for the current air toxics and noise exposures inside this transition area. In my year of observing the Tideflats, I saw many workers exposed to adverse impacts of air pollution where they were unmasked during red air quality days. Noise, too, is a persistent cumulative risk for affecting workers' hearings, and workers resting outdoors are subject to the increasing risks of heat exposures. I want a better evaluation of how this alternative correlates with other plans in existence in Tacoma, specifically the Urban Forest Management Plan, the Climate Emergency Declaration, and the Comprehensive Plan to End Homelessness. In this assessment, new design principles should be considered, such as the planting of native ground and canopy cover and the extending buffers to the principal rivers by another 150 feet. In the engagement process, the public clearly requested access to the Tideflats for culture, education, scientific, and recreation opportunities. Yet this is not evidence in Alternative 3. The more the public can engage with and visit the Tideflats, the more they will come to learn and participate in the stewardship, care, and reverence for this regenerative ecosystem and our planet. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next speaker in the queue is Andrea Ray. Please state your full name and physical address for the record. Please speak slowly and clearly, and your comment can begin when the timer starts.
Thank you, Andrea Ray, Tacoma Pierce County Chamber, physical address 950 Pacific Avenue, Suite 300 in beautiful downtown Tacoma. Appreciate the opportunity to provide a comment here. I also did submit written comments for the record. The Tacoma Pierce County Chamber of Commerce represents over 1,300 businesses in the South Sound. We are a nonprofit service organization focused on providing equitable economic development and community engagement in our South Sound region. We support efforts to protect and safeguard our environment. Our Manufacturing and Industrial Council is dedicated to both preserving and safeguarding our environment and living wage jobs and career opportunities that help ensure equitable economic development and generational wealth building. These are not mutually exclusive priorities and in fact are inextricably linked to the future health and well-being of our community. This process needs to be open, transparent, and inclusive. I know our office was just made aware of this meeting today. There was no mention of the meeting on the city website or calendar, which makes outreach and equitable engagement with the community challenging. Please let us know how we can better engage and stay connected to receive timely notices and communications. The overarching themes for the sub-area planning process have been stated to include, again, economic prosperity for all, environmental remediation and protection, transportation and capital facilities planning, and public participation and outreach. We urge you to not pursue any alternative that does not adequately address and center all the above. We need a robust, diverse, and thriving manufacturing and industrial center to capitalize on our equitable economic development and workforce strategies and initiatives. We also want to encourage a more inclusive engagement process to include the business community in solution finding, as we share a deep desire to both preserve and protect our environment and economic vitality. Thank you so much for your consideration and appreciate the opportunity to be here today. And thank you.
Thank you. And if any folks have joined the public comment period since the beginning of the presentation, if you'd like to provide a verbal comment tonight, please use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen and you'll be placed into a queue. Comments are limited to 3 minutes this evening, but you can also submit comments online or via mail and they will all be weighted equally. So the next speaker in the queue is Twilia Westling. When it is your time to speak, please provide your full name, your physical address, and please speak slowly and clearly.
Bonjour, Nindawe Magana Dog, Twyla Westling, Indigenous Cause. Greetings, relatives. My name is Twyla Westling. I live at 4408 Browns Point Boulevard here in Tacoma, Washington. I will be submitting a more robust commentary in addition to what I'm stating tonight. I want to point out in your land acknowledgement, and Miigwech, thank you for that beautiful land acknowledgement. You talked about the Puyallup and how they have historically hunted and fished on these lands, and that's true. But one of the things that I think people tend to forget is that hunting and fishing was part of a thriving economy for the Puyallup tribe. Not only the Puyallup tribe, but many of the Coast Salish nations that lived in and around our beautiful Wulsh, this Commencement Bay. So when we talk about these economic principles, it's important to remember that there were thriving economies here before industry arrived 100 years ago. And it's important that we recognize that it's time to step away from these colonial principles and frameworks of economic interests and make sure that we're making room for traditional indigenous economic principles and interests, which have supported these tribes for, since time immemorial. So I'm hoping that we'll see more information about how those two things can be brought together, because the health of the Bay and a thriving economy, they're not mutually exclusive concepts. So I want for us to think about more about how do we bring together this idea of, hunting and fishing and shellfish gathering as part of a traditional indigenous economy. How do we get back to that? So as I stated before, I will be making a more robust commentary via written commentary. I just wanted to make sure and pop in tonight to hear what everybody else was saying, and also to have my voice heard. So miigwech for your time, and I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. Okay, the next speaker in the queue is Yvonne Mccarty. When it is your time to speak, please share your full name and your physical address, and speak slowly and clearly for the record.
Hi there, my name is Yvonne Mccarty, and I'm the chair of the Northeast Tacoma Neighborhood Council, and my address is 1932 Lighthouse Lane Northeast. The first thing I would like to share is my personal vision for the future of the Tideflats. The Tideflats is a place that exists ultimately for the benefit of the people, with clean industries and businesses that operate with zero emissions, zero spills, and zero incidents. It is a region that is healthy, safe, and welcoming to employees, visitors, residents, and wildlife. It is a place that you can find ample environmental, scientific, educational, cultural, and recreational opportunities that honor the land and the people that were here prior to the industrial neglect of the last century. The Tideflats can be all of these things and still provide employment growth for employees at all skill and education levels through clean maritime trade and transportation and clean and innovative businesses. This is the Tideflats that I would like to leave for the future generations of Tacoma. Next, of the four preliminary alternatives, there are no options that will be successful in implementing the vision I just laid out. However, I believe that the closest option to that end, option 3 is the closest option to that end. I would ask that you modify option 3 to include the following 5 points. 1, make the Hylobos waterway reflect the zoning that is found on the Theophos waterway. For example, zoning that is found on the downtown side of the Theophos should be the same as on the Northeast Tacoma side of the Hylobos. The land opposite of the side of the Hylobos should reflect the zoning on the opposite side of the Theophos, which is where the light industrial commercial buffer should be located. 2, specifically identifying opportunities for culture, education, scientific, recreation on the Hylobos, which are currently not identified or listed on the alternative map. 3, look at all the uses in the light industrial zone along the east side of SR 509, the 5 transition area, to ensure that they provide an adequate light industrial commercial buffer from residential areas. 4, specifically identify land uses that are incompatible with a healthy and safe ecosystem and that do not support the vision of the project team's guiding principles for the entirety of the Tideflats region. For example, where the environmental impact, health impact, or safety risk are just too high. 5, include a pedestrian/bike trail along the Northeast Tacoma waterfront that would connect to other existing or future trail systems throughout the South Sound. Finally, here are some of the things that should be included in the scope of the EIS. Number 1, health impact assessment required by the Board of Health for large industrial projects, including health outcomes of employees and nearby residents. 2, cumulative air pollution study, not just PM 2.5, but also toxic air pollution, hazardous air pollution, volatile organic compounds, etc. 3, water pollution study. 4, noise pollution study. 5, traffic study. 6, identification of clean and innovative industries and businesses and the value that they would bring the region in terms of revenue and employment density, including a range of job types. And I know my time is out, but I'll skip over the rest of them except for the last one I'd like to leave you with, which is, where is it? Economic analysis that includes an ecosystem services valuation. And I'll submit the rest of my comments in via email. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, we encourage all, if you have additional comments or tonight's time wasn't enough, to please submit your comments online or via mail. The next speaker in the queue is Lester Pogue. When it is your time to speak, please state your full name and your physical address for the record, and your comment can begin when the timer starts.
Hello, my name is Lester Clarence Pogue Jr. I live at 2520 G Court, number 3 in Tacoma, 98405. I'm a resident of Tacoma in the Hilltop neighborhood. I am commenting tonight in regards to the concerns of many residents and neighbors toward the health and safety, cultural development, Puyallup tribal sovereignty, trees, plants, and animals, insects, and equity in job creation, and the halting of any further toxicifying of the Tideflats area. I'm speaking tonight in almost support of alternative number 3, with the inclusion of the most beneficial ideas introduced from other alternatives and the good from the public comment efforts. And here's one of them. With regards to the EIS work, I will repeat our request for an cumulative impact assessment of the air quality currently at the Port of Tacoma, conducted by a firm independent of the industries at the port, as well as a study of any future industry introduced at the port to understand its impact on the air quality, as well as a health impact statement. And to include the EIS should have a study to strengthen the cultural development of Puyallup people's presence on their ancestral lands, and how the strengthening of that cultural development can create restored natural habitat at the Tideflats within the sub-area plan, as in the introduction of 150-foot buffers to protect and encourage restoration of fisheries and existing tree canopy and native habitat, protection of the cottonwood trees in the Thorn Project. 3, the EIS should do work to establish an equitable buffer zone protection of the northwest slope and work to a rezoning of the industries present there to mitigate toxicity of existing industry like Schnitzer Scrapyard. 4, the consideration in this EIS should also include the health and safety as well as economic development that could be introduced at the Port of Tacoma in the forms of green energy industry job creation that could address diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts as a goal of the stakeholders involved by utilizing the Tacoma Public Schools and motivate learning opportunities along with other education entities in the Pierce County area. Providing green energy tech jobs will be beneficial to the health and safety of our future generations. Yes, that's about all I have. I'll write more. Thanks.
Thank you. And I did commit to sharing how many folks were in the meeting. So we do have 41 participants with us right now. So the next speaker in the queue is Melvin Berglund. When it is your time to comment, please share your full first name and your physical address, and your comment can begin once the timer starts.
Okay, my name is Melvin Berglund. I live at 2405 Birch Street, Northeast Tacoma, 98422. And I am in favor of option number 3, plus some of the additions that some have recommended. Since so many have already spoken of certain things, I don't want to just add to or be repetition of what they've already said. But I'd like to remind us how we got here to this place. There were 2 major things that happened to the Port of Tacoma. One was the methanol plant, and the other one was the LNG plant. And these 2 sounded the alarm for people that live around the port to the realization that we are living in an area that has incredible potential for growth. And as it was mentioned by the first speaker today, the possibility of another $1 billion operation coming into the port. The way the port is designed, the laws, the rules that are in place don't seem to handle that type of growth the way that the port is situated around an environmental situation where there's people, there's ecosystems, and all these things need to be taken into consideration. That's the purpose that this entire process that we're going through now was started, so that there would be discussions, there would be opportunity for people to speak, and there would be a clear framework that things would have to fit into. Originally, the thought was that this could be done with a rezoning along the High Labos. And then the city of Tacoma made the determination, no, it has to be much more robust than that. That's where this is right now. I want to first of all compliment everybody for the good work that you've done. Stay with it, stay focused. You're not doing this for our generation. I'm 70 years old. You're doing this for our kids. You're doing this for our grandkids. And so thank you very much for your hard work. I would like to say one thing about education. If you go over to near Boeing, you'll see a school there. It's the Aviation High School. I would love to see a consideration of possibly Bates putting a branch somewhere down there in the harbor for a harbor high school, where we can teach the kids of our area how to run a 21st century port, do a good job, be world-class, meet the needs of the business, meet the needs of the community, and make a lot of money while we're doing it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And if folks would like to revisit any information about the project, you can visit the project website. We can get a link to the project website in the chat to review the draft alternatives and the scope. And we have 3 speakers left in the queue who have their hands up. So if anyone would like to speak who hasn't yet tonight, feel free to use the raise hand feature to be added to that queue. The next speaker is Heidi S. Please state your full name and physical address for the record, and your comment can begin once the timer starts.
Good evening. My name is Heidi Stevens, resident of Tacoma. The sub-area review seems off track from the reasons that residents had called for it. The main concern was environmental and the desire to move away from polluting industry, yet these plans are leading far more toward protecting heavy industry and fast-tracking permitting. Environmental studies and species protection should be reviewed often, not for convenience. So none of these are acceptable yet, but starting with alternative 3, my preferred plan would also include every habitat preservation restoration area from each alternative should be included in the final, and more shoreline restored. One specific no-brainer is to preserve the cottonwoods, the natural green spaces at roughly Thorn Road and Maxwell Way. Those are some of the last natural areas working hard to counteract air pollution and heat, maintaining water retention and urban wildlife in that area. That absolutely, unequivocally must be retained on any final plan. Second, there needs to be the same buffer as on the downtown side added on the High Labos side for Northeast Tacoma. Third, a health impact assessment must be done to understand the current status of negative impacts to workers in the surrounding areas and those who should be able to use the port for recreation. Also, there needs to be inclusion of this missing data. The monetized value of current and continuing costs of present day pollution, heat and urban dead zones, loss of healthy soil and aquatic life. There needs to be building design standards for going forward, solar power, green roofs. And please make clear any exact requirements of the Growth Management Act regarding jobs. None of the current plans seem to be seriously considering climate change. We can still support trade and shipping and alternative non-toxic industry, but that means adjusting the zoning for no lease renewal of any fossil fuel non-shipping industry within our port. Green hydrogen requires carbon emitting energy to create, which is what we need to be turning away from as part of the final plan. So there needs to be an expectation of green energy green industry, and zero emission goals. Thank you, and I will also submit comments in writing.
Thank you. The next speaker in the queue is Kyle Jolibois. When it is your time to speak, please give your full name and physical address, and please speak slowly and clearly. Your comment will begin once the timer starts.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
My name's Kyle Jolibois. My address is 431 Broadway, number 706, Tacoma, Washington, 98402. Lifetime resident of Tacoma. And a gentleman I knew who went by the name Sonic Guy told me that something was happening in our port that I should be concerned about. It was called methanol. I've been fighting this since 2015. We stopped it. And then the LNG came in. It's 2 miles from my residence. And it has a 15-mile blast zone. So everything you guys are talking about, all these jobs, would be gone. And I found it very rich of US Oil being the first one to comment tonight, because we had an electricity storm here and the power went out and they sued the city for $2 million. We have a lot going on in the port that shouldn't be going on, like expanding. We have warehouses wanting to build on aquifers. We have people wanting to tear down Jerry Oaks. We've lost 5 Mile. We've lost a lot, and we will lose more if we continue to go down the road of fossil fuels in the Port of Tacoma. We have so much growth that would be gone if anything happened in our port. COVID dampened our spirits because we couldn't stand against you guys. But you guys need to listen to people like Stephen Storms, people that care about Puget Sound for the future. We have to start honoring the tribe, not taking away more land so we could build more warehouses and fossil fuel industries on them for jobs. The jobs will always be here, but will the people? And Stephen, I've been in many meetings with you for the last 6 years, and I know you want to do the right thing, but you got to listen to the people. And I yield my time.
Thank you. The next speaker in the queue is Kathy Lawlin. When it is your time to speak, please share your full name and your physical address. Please speak slowly and clearly, and your comment will begin when the timer starts. And I'll give a chance to reset the timer. Okay, great.
Good evening. My name is Kathy with a K, Lawhon, L-A-W-H-O-N. I'm on Facebook. I live at 1114 South 11th Street on the Hilltop. When I came along and got involved here, it was the LNG plant, which is now in operation, we understand. 18 full-time jobs, 18 full-time jobs. It's methane. It comes from fracking. Methane is 86 times worse than CO2 as a greenhouse gas. It has a 10 to 13 mile incineration radius as determined by a study that was commissioned by Tacoma Fire Department and withheld from the people by the city of Tacoma for 3 years until it was obtained on a public records request. That's really I wonder how that would impact any future industry deciding to put a facility or a school for that matter down there. It's on Puyallup land or on arsenic landfill between Puyallup land. PSC began by digging, a whole bunch of 100-foot holes into this arsenic slag, and then we wonder what's wrong with the orchids, other than that they're starving to death. PSC lied about the whole thing. They told us they weren't intending to export, and tell me that's not a part of this billion-dollar expansion. And I was at the library meeting that the previous caller referred to, that was the port and this the city and it was the port and Army Corps and some kind of process meeting. I don't think there was any media there. This is like the twilight zone of news media. They don't report on anything much that happens in the port, especially on the LNG plant. The people do not know, and it's a travesty. It never would have happened if the people had known, and they knew that. So they lied that it was not intended for export. Of course it was. That's the only way it can be financially feasible to them. They said they wouldn't be fueling barges. Of course they're going to do that. They said they're only going to, fuel these 2 tote ships. Well, tote, I think, had 4 ships, and one of them they sailed straight into a Cat 4 hurricane. So I don't know what kind of condition tote is in, but I can tell you that CBI that built the PSC LNG is in terrible condition, and or McDermott, who bought CBI in 2018, is in terrible condition, especially after they bought CBI. CBI is the same company that built the Freeport LNG plant that had a terrible, pretty scary explosion in June 8th of 2022. So what are we doing in the port, and what who let this happen? I'd say the media is very responsible, and I'd be really surprised if they're even in queue and going to report tonight. We have a real problem in Tacoma with people learning what's going on, with outrageous things happening in our port, with industry getting away with whatever they want, and with us not holding them accountable. I don't know what kind of condition McDermott is in now. I assume that they are continuing to maintain
Kathy,
the LNG plant, and I would be very—
Kathy, we're out of time.
All right.
You finish your thought, and then we want to move on to the next speaker.
I just want to say that I have real concerns about the safety, and that it does have Steve Storm's 40-year experienced chemical engineer did agree to a 10-mile radius if that tank is full and that LNG gets out of incineration. That's all downtown Tacoma, all the way up past Hilltop. I'm in the incineration zone. So is Kyle. So is Northeast Tacoma and the entire Puyallup tribe. So, what the hell?
Thank you, Kathy. Appreciate you being here tonight. And thanks for your comments.
Thank you. If you have additional comments, please feel free to submit them online or via mail. We'll move to the next speaker in the queue. That's Janine Provazek. When it's your time to speak, please provide your full name and your physical mailing address, and please speak slowly and clearly. Your comment can begin once the timer starts.
Hi, my name is Janine Provazek, and I live in the North Slope District of Tacoma. One thing I'm hearing as I hear all these people talk, some of them so eloquently, is this is about trust, not just about talking about the environment and the businesses, but we need to trust that the plan that does ultimately get chosen is a plan that works for everyone. Yes, we want the economy to continue to grow, but it has to be grown without polluting, and that's the challenge. The sub-area plan that most people are going for tonight, and I absolutely agree we need to go for, is Plan 3, even though I think that it falls very short in face of the climate crisis that we face and what the climate scientists tell us that we have to do to save ourselves. However, it is a beginning. It puts us on the right path. Our history has been to let polluting industries dictate our plans, our zoning, our policies. They have not been held very accountable. I understand we are a shipping port. Yes, let's focus on the shipping. Let's support the grandfathered polluting, dirty industries that are there now, but we cannot afford to add any more dirty industries and businesses in the port. If we're going to be scientific, and I notice in some of the slides that we are going to be scientific, we're no longer going to pretend that the climate science is, bogus. We want to create an environmentally safe and environmentally just community. Listen to the community members who are health impaired by the degree of pollution these companies have continued to generate. Think of the future generations of residents who will pay the price if we continue with business as usual. We need the Tideflats to be a healthy place for people to work and play. We need it to be welcoming and green and productive. There are many industries, like, for example, the tech industry, that would create numerous jobs and revenue for our city and keep our young people here rather than going to Seattle or Silicon Valley. Our survival depends on going green. We are no longer going to be relying on fossil fuel. We all know we have to face off fossil fuels. Let us face this head on with creativity and boldness. Even as we attend this meeting, there's a decision being made tonight, possibly to cut down the last old growth cluster of trees in the port. That's outrageous. This is exactly the opposite of what the environmental experts are telling us we must not do. And of course, we're going to do it. So that's where the trust comes in. We need to not be making those kind of careless decisions anymore. We need to go forward, not go backwards. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone else who's attending who would like to provide a comment tonight who hasn't already? If so, please raise your hand. Okay, I see someone in the queue. Barbara Church, when it is your time to comment, please provide your full name and physical address for the record, and your comment can begin once the timer starts.
Hi, my name's Barbara Church. I live at 6402 First Street, Court Northeast in Tacoma, Washington, 98422. Remember in 2016 when we began talking about the sub-area plan, we residents let the city and the Port of Tacoma, the Economic Development Board, and the Chamber of Commerce know that we did not want to have them market the world's largest methanol plant and LNG in our Tideflats. Then, in a March 2016 TNT article titled "Vision of the City's Future Looks Less Industrial," written by then Councilman Robert Toms, he said, impacts of industrial projects can be serious and deserves rigorous community input and evaluation. As far as I know, there was never a Q&A for resident input. The sub-area plan, later proposed by the council and Elizabeth Pauley, had the following 3 priorities. 1, strengthen and support a safe city with healthy residents. So I asked for a health impact statement analysis and a cumulative air quality analysis. From the beginning, residents asked for a stakeholder or advisor to represent health. When Lori Jenkins was the senior advisor at the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department, she recommended that every large project have a health assessment. Another, protect the work environment of the port employees to provide a safe and less polluted environment for them, local residents, and the Puyallup tribe. Also, have the Northeast Tacoma side of the port as clean as the downtown side. 2, foster a vibrant and diverse economy with good jobs for all Tacoma residents. Let's look at green job possibilities with 0 emissions. Take advantage of the many universities and colleges in Tacoma to provide non-polluting technical port jobs for graduates. Assure, and then number 3 was assure outstanding stewardship of the natural and built environment. Protect the salmon and shellfish and wildlife. Align with the current climate emergency declaration and climate action plan. Add an economic green zone. And there's a small stand of cottonwood trees in the port. These are some of the last native trees at the port. Protect them. As we go back to why we've asked for the sub-area plan, it was like Councilman Tom said, the vision of Tacoma looks less industrial. We want to reimagine what Tacoma and the Port of Tacoma could be. Will Tacoma be known, as it currently is nationally, the industrial city south of Seattle, or the city of destiny? Remember, Tacoma has not always been an industrial city. We are on the ancestral lands of the Puyallup tribe. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak who has not yet spoken tonight? If you wish to provide a public scoping comment, please use the raise hand feature at the bottom of the screen. If you have already provided a verbal scoping comment tonight, we ask that if you have additional comments, you submit them to our online tracker or send them in via mail. And we just put that information in the chat. Is anyone else on the call interested in providing a verbal scoping comment at this time? And again, if you have already provided a verbal scoping comment and would like to add additional context, we do ask that you submit that online or via mail. All those comments will be weighted the same and read by the entire city and consultant staff. We're just giving folks an opportunity to speak once tonight. And for those folks who do have their hands raised, who have already provided a comment tonight, if your comment is actually a question about the logistics tonight, or where a document is located, or something about the EIS process, we encourage you to submit that in the Q&A feature, and one of our project team members can direct you to where that is. If your hand is up because you're interested in providing another scoping comment, we ask that you do that online or via mail. And if no one else has their hand up at this time, we may take just a short break. We will stay on the line and keep an eye out in case anyone else who has not spoken yet raises their hand. We will stay here until the end of the meeting at 8:30, but we will move. Oh, and one reminder, if you've dialed in by phone and you're interested in providing a comment, you can press *9 to virtually raise your hand. So I'll give a moment in case anyone has called in by phone and would like to provide a comment. You can press *9. Okay, great. We have someone in the queue with the phone number ending in 820. So when it is your time to speak, please provide your full name and your physical address and speak slowly and clearly. And you can, if you cannot see the timer, we can let you know when that's begun. Please let us know if you can or can't see it. Okay, phone number. Oh, hi. Can you see the timer on the screen or not?
I cannot.
Okay.
It's all right.
Great. I will let you know once we are at 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
This is Sandra Purcell. I live at 2801 North Narrows Drive. And this is sort of a technical question. Is this available online to hear this tonight again? Can other people access what was said and shown tonight?
Yes, this presentation will be. Yes, the presentation will be made available on the website, the PowerPoint presentation and the recording from the meeting.
All right, that's all I really wanted to know, because I think that, and I just wanted to say that I'm glad that there's number 3 is on there, and let's work to strengthen it. Thank you.
Thank you. It doesn't look like we have anyone else who's on the phone. So if anyone else who is on the Zoom call who hasn't yet spoken would like to provide a comment, please use the raise hand feature to enter the queue. And I'll clarify that the video of tonight with audio will be included on the website following the meeting. All right, if no one else who hasn't spoken yet would like to go at this time, we'll take a quick break, and we will be here monitoring in case anyone raises their hand. The slide shows where you can provide an additional online comment to our online comment portal and the mailing address. So we'll take a quick break and we'll keep an eye out in case there's anyone else who would like to provide a verbal scoping comment. Thank you. Welcome back from our short 10-minute break. I just wanted to flag that there have been no new attendees who have raised their hand to speak. So if you are interested in providing a comment tonight, please do use the raise your hand feature to be entered into the queue to provide a verbal comment. If no one else raises their hand, I think that we will definitely stay here until 8:30 in case anyone joins late. But we will effectively just keep our cameras off and continue to take breaks until the end of the meeting. So if anyone who has not yet spoken would like to raise their hand, please feel free. And as a reminder, we are accepting comments online via our online comment portal. The link is provided on the slide, and via mail. All comments are due by August 5th, Friday, August 5th, 2022. Comments should be submitted by 5 p.m. And all comments that were shared here verbally tonight or that are submitted in writing will be weighted equally. So if there is no one else who hasn't yet spoken, who would like to raise their hand, I'll go ahead and take another break. The evening is effectively finished unless someone else joins. We will again be here until 8:30. But for those who want to hop off, thank you so much for attending the meeting. We really appreciated hearing from you.
All right, good evening again. We're nearing 8:30, at which point it looks like we will be going ahead and closing out the meeting. We do have a few folks that have stuck with us till the end tonight. And I really wish we had some particular words or pearls of wisdom that we could share for everyone that managed to wait and stay with us all the way to the end here. But just really want to extend my gratitude for everyone who's able to come tonight to provide your comments and thoughts at this juncture of the planning process. Really glad we were all able to hear from other community members about their perspectives and their views on the work that we're doing. And just want to remind everyone one last time as we close out the meeting, this is not the last time we'll be accepting public comments. So we have the kind of immediate deadline for EIS scoping comments on August 5th. But following that, we will have an opportunity to provide comments to the City Council, and there will be many other opportunities throughout the rest of the plan to work with our community to develop a community-oriented plan. So really looking forward to the rest of the process, really looking forward to working with everyone. And my thanks again for being here tonight. And again, my appreciation for the team, Nicole, Adam, Pam, Stephen, and Sue, who've all been here tonight helping to pull off this meeting. Again, very appreciated. Any final words, Pam or Nicole, before we close out? All right, no?
Nope.
All right. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great night and look forward to seeing you all hopefully in person sooner rather than later. The best wishes and good night.
Good night.